I'm recording this 1 o'clock in the morning on 1st of December. I wanted to record a video while I'm emotionally reasonable. Had quite a good day, and yesterday was quite good as well. So as I mentioned in the previous video, I've been cutting down on the treatment, and a couple of people asked me about the nerve damage in my fingers, and I haven't felt any of the symptoms since the time before last when I had chemo, when I had the metal toxin oxaliplatin, which is a platinum-based poison that attacks new cells. So it attacks cancer, but attacks everything else in your body as well that's growing. And it's a metal toxin that builds up in your blood, builds up in the red blood cells, and your body has no mechanism to get rid of it, really. Blood cells are replaced every 4 months, so it's sort of building up over a period of 4 months, and then obviously if you're having that chemo all the time, which I was having it every 2 weeks, then it just keeps building up and building up and building up in your body, and the nerve damage becomes permanent. But I've decided not to have that metal toxin. So at the moment, my fingers are okay, basically, which is good. Obviously, it's a balance, because maybe that metal toxin was the thing that was making the tumour shrink in my liver, and hopefully making the cancers in the other places go. So that I've got cancer in 3 different areas of the body. So I've got 6 cancers in the liver, which is a lot. I mean, that's too much to have liver surgery. I've got cancer in some lymph nodes in the pelvis, and by far the worst thing is cancer in the peritoneum. Some people have kind of very gently asked me how I'm going to die, which is a very fair question, because I think a lot of people don't know how you die from cancer. Cancer it's not a good word, because it's a whole bunch of different diseases, hundreds of different diseases that share in common this thing of unregulated cell division. So the cancer basically keeps growing, and the cancer is your body, and therefore your body doesn't attack it. Your body has lots and lots of mechanisms to stop cells kind of just doubling and doubling and doubling, but those mechanisms don't work for some reason in the case of cancer. They just don't seem to work. So, usually, I mean, remember, our body is under attack 24 hours a day from sun, from different gases in the air, like low-level ozone, from free radicals in a normal diet full of free radicals. It's not just in toxic plastic packaging, as we're led to believe by people who didn't pay attention at school. And your body is very good at dealing with that. That's actually one of the things that makes us human. It's one of the reasons why the human is the dominant creature on Earth, is that our body is so good at self-repair. Our sleep is very efficient. When we sleep, a lot of repair is happening. A lot of mechanisms to kill cells where the DNA has become mangled up, for want of a technical term, to denatured, I guess. So cancer is not a good word, because there's so many different diseases that are all cancers, and in my case I have a very, very common cancer called bowel cancer, which is cancer of the intestine, and it's spread through other parts of the body. the liver, some lymph nodes, and most dangerously, it's spread to, almost fatally, I guess, spread to the peritoneum, which is it's actually two membranes that a double layer membrane that goes over your abdomen, so it protects all those organs in the abdomen. And when the cancer's in there, you die. There's no other way of putting it. As far as I can tell, no one on earth has survived this cancer. Bowel cancer is very, very common. If bowel cancer is found early, it's one of the most treatable cancers. Stage 2, stage 3, you might have 70% chance of living 5 years, with quite a good chance of a complete cure. Stage 1, as if it's just found when it's in the intestine and hasn't even spread in the intestine, you're going to have 90% chance of living 5 years and a very, very high chance of living a normal life expectancy. Treat it with chemotherapy or surgery or radiation, and you're going to have a very good chance of living a completely normal life. For 5% of the people who get bowel cancer, though, it spreads to the peritoneum. And if you have regular chemotherapy, life expectancy is basically 7 to 9 months from when that tumour is first found, on average. I don't know what the spread is, but again, my impression is it's quite tight. So the range, the difference between some of those short term and some of those long term is quite small. So most people would be living that 7 to 9 months. If you're in somewhere like Japan, where along with chemotherapy you have an extra therapy called molecular targeting agent, which is generally not available in the UK, at least in the NHS, you might live a year or even a bit longer, maybe 14 months or something. So my oncologists, my cancer doctors, when they saw my scan result of the tumour shrinking, which means that the treatment's basically working, keeping the cancer at bay, their general opinion was that I'd live about a year. Now, at the risk of getting morbid, you don't live a lovely, healthy year and then drop down dead at the end. You might get 6 relatively healthy months, and then basically what happens is that the treatment works for some of the cancer cells and some remain. Cancer can actually evolve against treatment. It often almost always evolves against the immune system, which is why the immune system is so helpless against cancer. But basically what happens is the chemotherapy is keeping the cancer tumours the same size, or even shrinking them if you're lucky, and it gets to a point where that stops working, and they switch you onto different chemotherapy, and that gets another percentage of the cells. But it basically gets to a point where the cancer can't be controlled by the treatment, and that seems to happen after sort of 6, 7, 8 months, whatever. In the case of cancer that spread to the peritoneum, the peritoneum cancer is particularly resistant to chemo, or that's not technically right. Chemo is particularly bad at getting into the peritoneum. High concentrations of chemotherapy just don't seem to get into the tumours. The tumours are not like big, chunky tumours. They're tiny tumours spread across this membrane. And what happens is, obviously some of them grow a bit, but really what happens is they spread into the other organs because the membrane's going across the other organs. So at a certain point when the chemotherapy cannot control the cancer, you get just more and more cancers in your body, loads, in other organs of the body, particularly back into the intestine. In the small intestine, you've got about, I think it's 15 metres of small intestine, all coiled up, and the peritoneum is against that. So one way you die is tumours in the intestine that block something in the intestine is fatal. If you like, you can have emergency surgery. I am not going to be able to have emergency surgery, or emergency surgery is going to be very, very risky for me because I'm changing to a different molecular targeting agent called Avastin. I had one before called panitumumab, which caused a really bad skin rash, so I decided not to have that and have Avastin. Avastin works in a completely different way, doesn't cause a skin rash at all, but what it does is it stops your body making new blood vessels. So it stops the cancer getting new blood supply, which is great, but you can't have surgery. Well, it's very dangerous to have surgery because obviously when you have surgery you need to heal up, and that involves new blood vessels. So that's one way to die, is those secondary tumours. Another way is that you get this, for some reason, you get this build-up of fluid called ascites. It builds up in the abdomen, in the pelvis. I mean, litres of this stuff, very, very, very painful, very, very heavy. The doctors have to put in a special pipe to drain it out. So then you're walking around with this bag on you. I've got a colostomy bag already, but there'd be another bag. And you're basically not going to last very long. So that's what the end's going to be like. Another common ending of cancer is that just cancer spreads a lot in your body, and it's getting the nutrition. As the cancer's getting more nutrition than not leaving enough for the rest of your body, so you just starve. And that's a really unpleasant way to die. Very, very, very painful. I know, because I watched my mother-in-law starve to death over a 6-month period because her cancer was found too late to be treated. She had radiation treatment and it didn't work. And visited her many times. So that's what the end's going to be like for me in I don't know, maybe starting in 6-8 months time, something like that. As I say, it doesn't seem that anyone's survived this. Some people, live a year and a half. Some people undergo this massive surgery called cytoreduction and HIPEC, and they live a few years. But I don't feel I can. I'm not a candidate for that surgery at the moment, and I'm not going to have it anyway because the very, very, very high likelihood of becoming disabled in a lot of ways that would be such a burden for my wife, for my kids. So I don't know. I say I'm fighting on. I'm not. There's nothing to fight. It's that's the situation. Immunotherapy might make all the difference. My cancer fund is at matthewdons.org, matthew.dons.org. Sorry. Thanks for listening.